All good, sir.
Good morning, everybody. For the record, I apologize for running a little late, and I'm going to call this hearing to order. The first issue is the approval of the minutes for the July 10 meeting. So I'm going to approve their adoption. Is there a second?
Newberger.
I second. I motion.
Do a roll
Oh,
call.
I didn't do the roll call first. Sorry about that. Let's do the roll call.
All right. Commissioner Hughes,
Present.
Commissioner Powderly,
Present.
Commissioner Smart,
Present.
Commissioner Owens,
Present.
Commissioner Claiborne,
Present.
and Chair Newberger.
Present.
And you have a quorum with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 present. Oh, I forgot one. I'm sorry. Commissioner Pollock. Matthew Pollock. He raised his hand. He's present. Okay, that's what he raised his hand to say he was present. And there is an echo. Well, you have a quorum with 7 present.
Okay, now I'm going to move adoption of the June 10 minutes. Is there a second?
I second.
Any comments? Then let's do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Pollock? Did he raise his hand? Okay, he voted yes.
Is that a yes?
It's not a yes. Commissioner Powderly?
What is this for? What is this pertaining to?
The minutes. We're approving.
Oh, the minutes. Yes. Sorry, I apologize. You got thrown off by the roll.
Commissioner Smart?
Approved. Yes.
Commissioner Owens?
Yes.
Commissioner Claiborne?
Yes.
And Chair Newberger?
Yes.
Motion passes with all voting yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you all use your mics so the people listening online can hear you? Thank you.
So the next order of business is to call to hearing the resolution in 26 TIF-C 420, a resolution approving the Midtown Public Infrastructure Redevelopment Area TIF redistructure plan. Is there who's going to be making the opening statement?
Good morning, Chair. My name is Zach Wilson with SLDC. I'm head of the Incentives Department. In front of you, you have a resolution approving the Midtown Public Infrastructure TIF redevelopment plan. It's about 350 parcels in the Covenant Blue Grand Center Midtown area. It's roughly runs along Samuel Shepherd Drive to the north, Olive Street to the south, North Teresa Avenue on the west, and North 21st Street on the east. It's primarily an infrastructure TIF. We've had similar ones in the past like this. It's a pay-as-you-go at Lafayette Square. This would be something similar to that. Since this is a new TIF and it's been a while since we had this introduction to the TIF process and this type of meeting, we have Mark Spikeman who's going to kind of go over the process of what this meeting what we should vet during this meeting and how our next steps. And if you have any questions during this process, Mark and David are here to answer those questions. After Mr. Spikeman speaks, we'll have Mr. Hanson, Mr. Weber, Mr. Leckermeyer, and Mr. Hartzell to present for the developer.
Very good.
Thank you. My name is Mark Spikerman. I'm an attorney with Gilmore and Bell, and I work as special counsel to SLDC on TIF matters. The TIF Act, Missouri law, provides two important duties for you members of the TIF Commission. That is to hold a public hearing and to make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen regarding the proposed redevelopment plan, redevelopment project, and redevelopment area. You'll hear from the developer real quick, and after I start speaking, I'll ask that you officially start the public hearing. But in general, once you hear comments, You've had the materials sent to you already. At the conclusion of the public hearing, if you're comfortable, you can pass the resolution that's before you. If you're not comfortable, if you need more time, if you have other questions, you're welcome to take additional time, come back another week if needed to make a decision. We want to make sure that you have all the information you need to make whatever decision you're going to make following that public hearing. Are there any questions regarding the process?
Hearing none.
Okay, I would then ask that you start the public hearing and then that we invite the developer up to present.
Okay. So today we're opening the public hearing on the Midtown Public Infrastructure Redevelopment Area. And the developer is about to speak.
Good morning. My name is Chris Hansen. I'm the Executive Director of the Kranzberg Arts Foundation. I want to thank the commissioners and SLDC for having us back again this month. We are excited to bring to the community an opportunity on a proposal for the Mid Infrastructure TIF District. This has been a collaborative effort between the Kranzberg Arts Foundation, Grand Center, Inc., the Locust Business District, and Midtown Alley. Nick, could you move to the next slide, please? First, I wanted to orientate us with the boundaries. I think one point of clarification, the furthest west or the furthest east these boundaries go is Jefferson. There was an earlier plan that carved out an area going north into 21st, but there were some complications with the Northside Regeneration Plan, and we've decided after getting advice from the city to keep these boundaries contained to the west of Jefferson. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to kind of go back and just give a little color around how this began. Over the last decade, the Kranzberg Arts Foundation has been heavily focused on redeveloping the eastern edge of the Grand Center Arts District, which sat pre-2019 in fairly poor conditions. There were a lot of blight and vacancy. There were no special taxing districts. So, you weren't getting the safety, you weren't getting the street sweeping and cleanliness. And we really put our energy into connecting the main vein of the Grand Center Arts District to the broader Midtown area and back to downtown. In doing that, we've really played a de facto role of covering a lot of the public realm and almost played a de facto TIF in the way we've supported the nonprofits and creative industries to be able to grow capacity there. So we put millions of dollars in not only redeveloping the building, also into the public realm, improving street lighting. We clean up the trash, we fill up the planter boxes, wayfinding efforts, and public art initiatives that really create a vibrant area, all in the face of deficits of pedestrian connectivity, really harsh traffic and street level activity, harsh sidewalks. And we just, but we've noticed over time that through our efforts of making the public realm improved, it's been a lot easier to retain the businesses that we've had and grow new businesses in that area, but not without those public improvements and things like crosswalks and bump outs and traffic calming more than ever as we've increased over the last 10 years that walkability and that traffic. Those challenges present even greater issues for us as the population continues to move down in that area and is having a hard time traversing it. So through that private investment, we've noticed the power of what it can do, but we're still facing a lot of deficits. And in about 2 years ago, we started a Grand Center East Impact Zone plan to really understand how we could leverage and utilize our strategic sites to make sure that they were catalyzing growth for economic development and new opportunities in Grand Center and Midtown. And in doing that, we identified the necessity of some sort of technical vehicle that started to help support these public improvements. We couldn't keep carrying the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that we were pouring into the public realm, and completely understanding why the ward capital and other city resources needed to go to other places. And so we were very understanding of the fact that these improvements, the city could not help us with these improvements at this time, but we needed some sort of support. And we went to our city partners at SLDC and just asked for them to help us think through what could be possible. And at that time, we weren't seeking any private developer incentives. We weren't seeking any control or even a use of a TIF. We were just looking for a technical vehicle that could help support improving the public realm, by which makes it easier to retain and attract the businesses, retain the business we already have and attract new businesses and new development. The city had proposed that this could be a good use of the TIF in this new way of imagining it, but asked us to think a little bit bigger. And so for the last couple of years, we've been engaging stakeholders all throughout Midtown to understand that they have similar challenges through Midtown Alley, Locust Business District, all down Washington Avenue to Jefferson, have just been challenged to keep the public realm at pace with the growth of the neighborhood. And we're having the same frustrations we were having at keeping safe places, accessible places, sidewalks that were repaired, ADA accessible crosswalks, just the simple things that make it so much easier for the small businesses, the property owners, and the small developers to be able to ensure when they deploy their investments that they get that return on investment and that they can be successful. So in doing that work over 2 years, we've talked to many stakeholders, our institutional partners surrounding the footprint, city officials, city agencies, and the different taxing districts. And we decided as the Kransberg Arts Foundation that we would play a fiscal agent role to invest in this feasibility, to work across our community, to bring the community together, to understand the challenges and the opportunities, to invest in the feasibility and the economic modeling, and to ensure that this was something we could all do together. So I just wanted to give a little background that we didn't seek a TIF, we seek support and partnership with the city and a collaborative effort inside of the Midtown area with the major stakeholders, property owners, residents, business owners, to help catalyze the growth of Midtown to ensure it can be the most productive asset, one of the most productive assets in the city's armature, something that can help us grow the increment, grow new businesses, bring residents into an area that really has momentum, but is still struggling with the conditions by which the public realm is in. Nick, will you go to the next slide? So again, we have many letters of recommendation in our application and letters of support, but we couldn't do this without the support of our Alderwoman Laura Keyes, which is here with us today, the support of our trustees at the Kransberg Arts Foundation, the leadership and board at Grant Center, Inc., the businesses and stakeholders and property owners of Midtown Alley and the Locust Business District. Please go to the next slide. So again, the uses for this are for public infrastructure only. No private developer incentives, no eminent domain control. This is not about incentivizing developers or paying people to make their project cheaper. This is for streetscaping, landscaping, other public serving improvements. Also, this TIF does not touch any of the current tax increment. It is not taking away anything from the SIDs or the SBDs. Another reason the TIF made sense is because it does not add any additional tax burden to people that are visiting this area. And this is a 50-50 split day one with the taxing jurisdictions. So other TIFs receive 100% of pilots and 50% of EATs. We're proposing a 50% split. So this is only focused on growth. So when it grows, we split, but this is not about taking 100% of the pilots. The goal is to improve the public infrastructure and evolve the district to an area that's ready to accelerate growth and support a national destination for arts, creative industries, and a new place for people, or expanded place for people and residents to come and enjoy, both to visit and to live. Can you go to the next slide? Also, we're very focused on ensuring that these goals align with something just happened there on the screen. There we go. Thank you. It's very important to us that these align with the city's goals. with the sloop and with the TMP. We're going to stay in alignment by improving conditions in historically under-resourced district, expanding opportunities for developers to participate in growth, strengthening connections to nearby cultural, educational, and institutional anchors. And with the TMP, repairing the sidewalks, improving multimodal safety, and enhancing connectivity for people walking, biking, and using transit. So we're very committed to staying aligned with the city and the goals of these agencies. Next slide, please. So as we've mentioned, we've got areas that have seen improvement, and then we've got really harsh areas. This particular area that you're seeing is right on Compton, the main vein into one of the most important cultural districts in North America, into one of the most creative and vibrant creative districts in Midtown. And this is the entryway. This is what the sidewalks and the streets look like. And these are conditions that you'll find all over Midtown. And they're conditions that make it harder for people to travel and traverse. There's cracked sidewalks, overgrown green spaces, and aging infrastructure that just make it more challenging to get the work done and ensure that we can retain and attract the businesses. Go to the next slide, please. So every dollar goes to community serving infrastructure that enhances safety, accessibility, and quality of life for all residents, workers, and visitors. Again, this is pedestrian lighting, traffic calming, improved wayfinding, stormwater management, pedestrian experience improvements, curb repairs and painting, creation of publicly accessible amenities such as pocket parks, and strategic placemaking based on arts and people-centered ideas. So again, conceptually, we're not baking in every improvement because you'll notice later on in our governance, we want the community in the particular 4 different zones that we've proposed to inform the process. We're not coming in with a blanket plan for everything. We want to work closely with BMP and the city to understand its priorities and the things that it needs to see us utilize these funds for. But we've laid out areas that offer us a prescription to fix sidewalks and have public lighting, and some other areas that we can have some catalytic placemaking projects that really define and make place. One of those being that entryway that we talked about, that really sore entryway coming into Compton, which right now there's a proposal for the Brick Line to move up in that direction. A program like this could support the Brick Line's expansion, but really these are just concepts and proposed areas. We're not baking these things in until we get that feedback and input from community stakeholders and also from the city of St. Louis. So just, these are a couple of just renderings and just conditions. You can kind of keep floating through this, Nick, of just, again, not things that we're prescribing just yet, but areas of emphasis that we know would be very important. Compton and Washington is one of the most dangerous intersections. We see vehicular issues there all the time. We're having close to pedestrian calamities on a daily and weekly basis as you traverse further west here, where there's not another stop sign until you get all the way up to Grand Avenue, and there's 35-mile-an-hour speed limits. That means people are driving 45 miles an hour, and you have one of the most vibrant pedestrian used areas in Midtown right here, and the conditions of the public realm do not support a safe way for them to traverse. Again, just more how we can improve the conditions, the types of things we can do, the bump outs, the beautification, the things that just really make it a place people want to be and stay. So as Zach said, this has been done before, but not at this scale. There was a program in Lafayette Square that did something in the public realm. There was a pay-as-you-go. It was a much smaller effort to improve a much smaller area. So we didn't reinvent the wheel entirely, but we did strip away a lot of the things that make a TIF challenging for people to support. So we look at this as a first-of-a-kind use of this vehicle. So we are not betting on growth when we do this. I mean, we're betting on growth, but we're only estimating. And when we think about the next 23 years, if we achieve our goals through a very modest speculation on what type of developments are going to happen in this particular area over 23 years, we believe we can increase for taxing jurisdictions, a net tax payment of $121 million. And we think that's very conservative. We've been very thoughtful and collaborative with the city on how we've made projections on projects. And again, this is a pay-as-you-go. We're not going to spend the increment until we get the increment. So if certain developments don't happen, then we don't receive that benefit. Again, this is how it breaks down a no-build scenario to a build scenario. And you can see that by fueling these small businesses and stakeholders and these private entities that have poured decades of time and treasure into this area, you can ensure that we're going to continue to be as tenacious and committed and continuing to deploy our efforts into this area to help grow it. And when we looked at projects that could help grow it, we didn't look at speculative new developers that have never done anything. We really focused on the work that the Kransberg Arts Foundation's done, the strategic sites that we've have, the partnerships we have, and the conversations we've been having over the last decade and even more recently over the last couple of years about particular sites that have the greatest potential for new businesses and new development. And same, we did that with Jason Johnson and we did it with Eric Toki, people that have put decades of investment and have real projects, real site control, and real partnerships, and a real trust and belief that if we can get the public realm right, they can continue to do their work to increase new businesses, increase new residential base, and new development.
Chris?
Yes.
Could I just interject here?
Please.
It's Hank Weber, and I've been very close to this project and working on this project for several years. Some of you may recall that the last time I was before this body was for the Cortex TIF, where I served as the chairman of the board of Cortex for that time. We made we made an argument that it would generate $100 million. We now believe that it's likely to generate $150 million. It's already about half that in the bank for these agents. So the notion that this is not a takeaway from tax revenue, but this is that these kind of well-designed developments increase tax revenue for the city, for the public schools, and for other jurisdictions in the state. We have an example in the last 10 years in St. Louis.
Thank you, Hank. Nick, next slide, please. So I think this is a big one, governance and uses. So again, the Kransberg Arts Foundation, using our trust and our ability and expertise, will act as a fiscal agent, but we are not the governing board. The governing board will be a representation of 4 different zones that'll have committees that will define the priorities and the projects, that will lift up a committee member to sit on the board. And also we've left a seat for a representative for planning and urban development agency if the city would take that opportunity. So the governance of this will be done with a separate governing body, representative of the community with the city at the table. The 4 zone-based advisory committees will be no less than 3, no more than 9. We've been working with Dean Nickerson at the Chaffetz School of Business to help us facilitate a governance committee so that we can start to really come together to framework this so that it's got a neutral party facilitating it and the stakeholders can come around it and help inform how we build this out. And again, here's the different zones. Please note that zone 4 no longer goes over as far to the east out of guidance from the city, but you're noticing that we're picking up areas that have different identities, different needs, and different stakeholders. So we thought it important to put them into zones. The board will think as one body. What are the projects that can catalyze growth and new development, new businesses so that we can grow the increment for the taxing jurisdictions? But also, how do we prioritize these individual zones and give them the things that they need to keep doing what they're doing? So we're both focused on a broader prescription and something that's more that every zone enjoys. Maybe that's sidewalk repairs or pedestrian lighting. And then a few areas that really offer the greatest chance to deploy some really important placemaking projects. And again, the uses, we've already discussed this. This is only for public infrastructure, not for development, not for private development. This is all about safety and accessibility and quality of life. Streetscaping is another important one. As we start to move down Washington, we have a real opportunity to help really calm the traffic and create a more pedestrian, cafeable, walkable, connected area that people want to linger, spend more money, and that residents want to benefit from. I think the Central West End is a great example of living somewhere that visitors love to come and hang out, but if you live down there, you really identify with getting out of your buildings and walking around and supporting the businesses. And right now, there's a lot of gaps in that for Midtown residents to be able to just enjoy their neighborhood because of the conditions. And then when appropriate and when defined by the particular zones or a particular area that we could transform and bring some more public realm improvements in green spaces. This is where we can add a little green space, but then add more art, add more events, and kind of do the groundswell and create and do the things and the programming that make people want to be there, that then help that next wave of maybe a new build or a new business. So sometimes you got to bring the programming into an area, and I think these small gathering spaces can do that. And then again, a more walkable and bike-friendly street network. As we talked about, the Brick Line is exploring how it can move through the Midtown area. We want to be supportive of that. We want to be able to help invest in that. We want to build stronger connections through key destinations and institutions, from Harris Stowe and SLU over the Grand Center East, our Grand Center Arts District, all the way through Midtown, connecting up to Downtown West. And, we hope that this is a TIF that the improvements reduce future city maintenance burdens, that the ward capital can be deployed to other areas. Other city resources could go more north and focus on areas that need those city resources more. We're just looking to retain the increment that we're creating in this area. And at a minimum, this is only on growth. We're not taking anything out of the current tax bucket. We want safer streets, a district identity that will catalyze growth throughout St. Louis, quality infrastructure in place so that developers and business owners can focus on investing in their businesses and their property and not compensating for the poor surroundings, and really just position St. Louis as a premier arts and cultural destination, and Midtown as one of those beautiful anchors that help revitalize and bring St. Louis back. Thank you so much. We really, thank you so much for letting us be in front of you today. And we leave you that, this, one of the quotes we heard is, this is one of the most appropriate uses of a TIF, and I hope that you agree.
Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. Is this time to ask for questions, or is there another presenter before that happens?
I believe we're ready for questions.
Okay.
Well, I would ask if somebody can walk through really the financial aspect of this. There's a $39 million TIF. Can somebody explain where the money comes to pay this and some more details around that?
Absolutely. I'll ask Nick to dig a little bit into some of the economic modeling, but again, this was based on looking at key sites, buildings, and areas that we are confident will be redeveloped over the next 23 years. And this is about, and the projections were based only on those sites. I believe Nick can walk us through, kind of those exact numbers and answer any of those questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Hartzler. I'm a Senior Project Manager of Credits and Incentives at Steadfast City. We are a economic development consulting firm in the city of St. Louis, and we've been brought on to help Chris and his team kind of put together the application materials that are before you today, as well as the economic modeling that got us to these values. So where we landed on this value was, again, we consulted with developers who have experience in this area to determine what projects are feasible within the next 23 years. Based on that list of projects, which is included as one of the exhibits on the cost benefit analysis under the project assumptions, based on those projects coming within the next 23 years and a very conservative assessed value appreciation over this 23 years, that led to us viewing, what increment would be generated as a result of those projects. And then based on that increment and taking the 50% of the EATs, or the economic activity taxes for those of the public, that's the sales taxes, and earnings taxes largely from the EATs side, and then 50% of the pilots or payments in lieu of taxes, that would be the real estate taxes paid from the property owners in this district. Based on that 50% share of the increment, that is where we land on viewing that there is a $39 million increment that can be generated for use towards these infrastructure improvements. So because it is a pay-as-you-go structure, only projects would be funded, only the infrastructure projects would be funded as the increment is generated in the fund. So if no activity occurs and this area remains stagnant and no increment is generated, no projects would be funded. The projects only get funded when the increment comes in.
Okay, and I'm still really not clear on where the increment comes in. So you put you repave Washington, or you repave the street. That cost, where does that lead to the incremental tax revenue coming in? That's what I need to understand.
It is through conversations with, and Chris, I might have you talk through from more the developer side, but it's through the conversations from the developers with the experience that they feel because of this investment coming in here, that gives them the comfort to move forward with their projects, where they know that the sidewalks outside their street, outside their private development, are getting rebuilt, that that the street work is being done. They have said and communicated that because they see this investment in the infrastructure coming in, that's what gives them the comfort to move forward with their private development. So that's the I hope that kind of answers the chicken or the egg.
I think that's right, and I mean it's about improving by which make the next wave of development possible, and also to help grow the businesses. So a great example that I gave in the last meeting was we just signed a lease with the Indo and Sato team to open up their third store, a Thai eatery. And they had been looking at the district for the last few years, and they came to us and said, we didn't really think the district was ready. There were still a lot of harsh conditions, very dark. But when they saw us putting pedestrian lighting up and they saw the public improvements we were making, they believed enough in the area to make that investment. And that investment, landing that business, will create dozens of jobs. It will have millions of dollars in revenue that's taxable, and that will grow the increment. And so as we grow the increment through small businesses that are now better connected and the sidewalks are safer, more cafeable, they're doing more business. That type of activity attracts another round of investment from a residential developer, attracts another concert venue. And we've witnessed when you improve the public realm, it increases the likelihood that people will bet on that area. And so the increment comes from new development. And as that new development and business growth happens, as that tax increment is generated, we will then have the benefit of utilizing that to continue to improve the public realm. So it comes from increased business activity and new development. And we've done a very thoughtful job with an art and science approach to speculating what that development looks like. Because again, no one's really ever used a TIF in quite this way. We're not assigning it to helping a developer achieve the gap in its development. We're saying bet on this area with us. At a minimum, we'll get CPI growth and we'll have a very little bit that we can work with. But we know that continuing, and we have evidence of improving the public realm improves the likelihood that the businesses and new development happen in these areas. And the Grand Center East area between Teresa, Delmar, Olive, and Compton is a perfect example of private resources impacting the public realm in real growth and momentum, but not without and not but for those public realm improvements. If we would have never improved the conditions, we wouldn't be here signing the leases and driving traffic and having the type of momentum we have. So I think that's where the increment comes from. But it is something we have to project, and we can't guarantee. That's why we're only taking it if it comes.
Does that answer
So
the
let
question?
me ask a couple of questions. Go ahead, Hank.
So I'm
Hank,
hoping that answers the question, but let me give a very simple explanation. My name's Hank Weber, and I'm the managing principal of Urban Impact Advisors. So I live actually on the corner of Euclid Avenue in the Central West End, which is the second largest producer of tax revenue in the city in terms of a retail area. Last night, we decided to take a short walk. We did it because it's very pleasant. And as we were coming back, we decided to stop at a St. Louis restaurant and have dinner. And that generates revenue that over time increases the property tax for that restaurant generated by that restaurant. It gives them more employees, it generates earnings tax. If it wasn't a pleasant place to take a walk, we would eat at home.
So let me ask maybe two questions. First of all, when we are talking about creating increased taxes for a particular property, like for example a restaurant, then I understand that we would do all this work on the sidewalk and the street in front of the restaurant. But what happens to the rest of the block? Does that get improved, or is it just frontage by frontage that we're working with?
No, that's a great question. No, again, we desire to work with our committees and work with the city to establish the priorities. But these are not site specific always, right? We're looking at affecting blocks, not just one business. I think there's times over the 23 years that maybe that is just a smaller area that we need to work on, or the zone has said that this 2 blocks or this storefront is really critical. But we're looking at larger prescriptions that really define and create place and connect the block. So this isn't really focused on just the sidewalk in front of the business. It's focused on that block.
And that's because we're trying to create an environment where people walk from place to place. We're trying to create a walkable, pleasant neighborhood, not simply a destination. All of our planning has been at the block scale. All of our analysis has been at the block scale.
So then I come to the second question. When we get a successful business that comes in and it's valued at a greater amount, and then there's money for the TIF. Well, let me even back up. That's the only source of money for the TIF. Is that right?
It's just 50% of, it's just the growth. That's the only source of dollars.
Increased growth of some particular business or several particular businesses.
That's right.
And so is it possible? I mean, I know that you would like to do things block by block, but they're pretty expensive. And so the question becomes, how do we turn frontages into whole blocks? How do we know there's enough money to do that?
Well, that's kind of back to, $39 million over 23 years for the type of improvements we'll So that's why we want to work very collaboratively with the city and with the committees to define those catalytic projects that really do impact new development and new business, right? So we have a few bigger projects that we can tackle in key areas, and then a lot of kind of prescribed improvements, sidewalk improvements, lighting improvements that can go over a larger area. But we have to be very focused on where we put these catalytic projects to ensure that they throw off, that they attract development, they attract new businesses, and they do that work. Because if you just spread it out over the whole thing and do sidewalks only, that's not necessarily enough. So this is going to take collaboration. We've defined that Olive and Compton and Washington, Locust are very important. Jefferson and Washington, up at Jefferson and Locust are important. Up by the Scott Joplin House and what the state wants to do around the Scott Joplin House, very important areas to focus on. And then making sure that around Central Baptist, another area very important to see it grow and become more vibrant and connected, as they're a major stakeholder and have great programs in the area. So, and then we want to connect that walkability, because I can walk to City SC in 11 minutes from my office. Anybody could. Most people won't. So we want to be able to feel comfortable doing that. And we think that, we've got the right inputs, the right stakeholders that are committed to help informing this, and the right partnerships with the city to help guide us.
And Chris, if I could add, on the topic of funding, because this is viewed as a long-term, infrastructure investment, certainly the governance board would be coordinating with the city to see any state or federal grants that would be available for these improvements as well.
Well, that was going to be my next question, and that is, will this project compete with the city's other transportation applications to the federal government money? Well, that's the question.
I think it'd be more coordination with, because any of these improvements would be done in the public right of way. Naturally, all projects would have to be done in coordination with the Board of Public Service, which is typically the body that would perform any typical city projects. So there would definitely be coordination with BPS to ensure that there's no competing there. It's more
This is a
growth at both ends.
This is an additional funding mechanism for public projects.
But we don't expect this funding mechanism to fully fund the project. A given project. Is that right?
No, it may fund 100% of a given project. It may fund less.
Yeah, I think it's project, if the brick line expands through Midtown and we could support that expansion through investing in that, we wouldn't be 100%. But there's other projects that we could tackle if there's growth. And we believe there will be, and we would be able to fund them at 100%, but that's on a case-by-case basis.
And I can't really speak toward BPS or their funding, but just from being as a city resident myself and having tuned into certain capital projects, they fund these projects that are grant funded based on the availability of the required local matching funds. And frequently it is the lack of those lacking matching funds that prevent additional, opportunity and growth. So here's an opportunity where we've got this funding, mechanism to provide that local match that really triggers those grants.
But it makes this neighborhood a higher priority than the city overall transportation program.
I think it makes gives this neighborhood a funding source to do projects that might otherwise not be done. And it actually frees up money to do other projects, David.
Rob has his hand up.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for acknowledging me. Nick's response is absolutely correct. The Board of Public Service typically applies for federal funding through East-West Gateway, and almost every federal project requires a 20% grant match. And one of the challenges throughout the city is finding someone to provide that match, particularly in selected neighborhoods. So having a funding source that can provide the 20% grant match would make this area much more likely to be able to receive federal funding. And it doesn't put this area in any higher position than any other part of the city. That's always determined by the Board of Public Service as to which grants it wants to submit in a given year. But there are also a lot of discretionary DOT federal grants that this would be able to help support. So I think the real key here is being able to have a grant match source, which would help these funds go a lot further with additional infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take the question one step further. What is the timeline? I mean, it will, right now, there's no money. So somebody will do a development, some money will be available then for working on a project. But how does that run? What are our timeline expectations?
So one of the things that we've discussed a lot is, it's going to take a couple years before there's any real increment to speak of to do anything catalytic. And I think, in that first year, it's really all about getting governance right, getting the committees really active, the community engagement, the inputs, the design, the collaboration with the city agencies to make sure that we're really focused on the right things, maybe looking at some of these matching dollars that, we could be additive to support the brick line or other goals that the state and city have. We know that getting some wins early and showing momentum will help keep everybody that's been down here for decades struggling with this. It would really empower folks and motivate. So we have looked at could we in the very beginning look at the base increment with just the CPI growth projections and maybe go and look at getting a small 3-year series loan against just that beginning increment, not the whole growth projection, but just maybe a CPI calculator. We could maybe go to MDMFB. We could go somewhere else and look at where we might be able to borrow a little bit early to be able to get some projects out of the gate, and then just sit back as we get to year 3, 4, 5 and beyond. It really starts to have much greater potential to fill up the coffers. So we're really looking at that and how we can do some early works, but not put the money at risk, right? We're not looking to bond against this or bet on this and borrow against it long term, but we're pretty safe in confident in being able to look at the next few years having basic CPI growth around the area. We have that level of momentum right now. So that's how we're looking at that.
And the borrower in that case would be Kranzberg's organization, is that?
No, the borrower would be the entity, the TIF entity. We're the fiscal agent. We'll ensure that for implementation, we'll use our staff and our ability to manage development projects. We'll ensure for compliance, but the entity is its own entity and it's governed by a body.
But it has no capital value.
Correct. So I'm correct, but again, I believe that, and maybe Nick or someone else could speak to this, but I believe that if we know that this is coming and happening, we'll need to show some performance, right? We won't be able to go to them day one and do that. But after a year, if we've had at least CPI growth and we have this on the record and knowing that this has the potential of growing, I think we could find a partner to help fund this in some way.
That's right, Chris. That would be the demonstration, and working with that public body like MDFB that would provide them the surety that whatever level of short term small term bond or loan that would be recovered.
And
Let me move to. There's a reference in the application to a pocket park. I don't know where that is, or at least I couldn't figure it out. And who would own and maintain that park?
Right now, all it defines is potential types of projects that we could get done. And green spaces is one of them. Again, that needs to be defined a little bit more with the committees. There's areas that could be in that are already maybe the city owns them. Maybe a private somebody owns them and is willing to let go of them. But that's not something that we're prescribing over the top of this. Like right now at Delmar, Sam Shepard, and Josephine Baker, we have private land that we're turning over for public use. We're not seeking to take any of these dollars into that. So it would really have to be a very strategic site. I might point to collaborating with the state of Missouri on actually helping them realize their vision for the surrounding parcels around the Scott Joplin House. I know that there's been talks and efforts to imagine how that is a more utilized green space area. That could be one that might fall into that category, but we don't have a particular site in a particular plan. It was more to describe these are the types of things that these dollars could be used for.
Okay, and then one final question from me, which goes directly to the issue of accessibility. If you build a sidewalk that just frontage by frontage, you can't have new sidewalks be fully accessible because the ones beside them are not fully accessible and they're built at a different time with different materials and so forth. So is there any way that you can ensure that the work is done block by block rather than property by property when we're talking at least about sidewalks?
That's always been the goal. We're not looking to just come in and make it, fix one sidewalk in front of something. We need to look at a much larger area. To your point, ADA accessibility throughout Midtown is challenged. We need to do more to improve it. Curb heights, better crosswalks, better lighting, and sidewalks that are continuously safe and accessible.
And all of that would be done in conjunction with the various responsible departments and the Board of Public Service and its permitting process and so forth.
Absolutely. And we look at this as a partnership with the city. We don't do any of this without their guidance, input, and oversight.
Do other members of the commission go ahead?
Yeah, I have a question in regards to tax revenue in the future. So the implication in what you're saying is that new business will move in, private enterprises. To the extent that additional tax exempt organizations would potentially move in, how does that impact the revenue projection?
Again, if they're tax exempt, they're tax exempt. If the city decides that there's a building or a development that they want to support through a different vehicle, we can carve it out of the TIF to make sure that if the city wants to invest differently in it, we've said we will let that property go. If let's say a nonprofit buys a building, maybe they don't have real estate taxes, but they still have earnings taxes for the employees they put in there. If they put any sort of sales tax, anything that would require sales tax. So if it had a food and beverage program or a rental program, that would all generate increments. So again, it's only on new taxes.
And in addition to that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
Best case, let's say a Clayton law firm wants to move 50 people over here 10 years from now. And let's say they go to the city hall and say, we won't do it if we can get an earnings tax waiver. That'd probably be the best case situation for you, but from a increased revenue perspective, we're not getting any earnings tax benefit. So that's all taken into consideration in your plan.
Patrick, there's always the option to exempt parcels from the overall plan. And I think in that case, they may well need to be exempted. Property may need to be exempted.
We're going to follow the city's guidance on things. If the city needs to do other things to support business and economic development, we take a second seat to that. We understand.
We've been asked previously the question of, for example, if a particular development needed tax abatement is in order to do that kind of facilitation. And if the city concluded that it needed tax abatement, there's a process of exempting parcels from the overall TIF, which I think simply
And I would add that, you know, the Kransberg Arts Foundation, they, as a nonprofit, they own, you know, they've made it part of their mission that through real estate transactions, they are creating space that becomes, you know, operable businesses. And so the Missouri law regarding nonprofits, only the spaces that they use for their mission are tax exempt. So where they own a building that is leased out to a coffee shop, that building is fully taxable. So that's on the tax rolls. So I do want to kind of make that yeah, clarifying point that while a nonprofit may own a building, if it's not used for their mission, it is on the tax rolls and produces taxes.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
other commissioners have questions?
Hey, real quickly, two easy ones. First one, put this out there. Whoever wants to answer it, I'll look over at council, but I want to make 100% sure. Enter it into the record. It's $39 million tax. The city can lose no money off this.
That is right, Commissioner. The city is in by no means guaranteeing that 39, I think it's 39 and a half, would ever come to fruition.
Okay, thank you. I
Yep.
wanted to get that. And then secondly, sidewalks. So everything is public domain. Aren't sidewalks privately owned? Am I wrong on that?
No, they're-
Can you help me
it's-
understand that?
It's public realm, but business, and this is one of the hard things. Business owners have a liability for cracked sidewalks in front of their building, but they don't own them, so they can't enforce the same types of things they can enforce inside of their buildings. It's still public realm, but they're liable for broken and cracked sidewalks in front of their building.
So some of this money can then go for sidewalks
Yeah,
Right.
sidewalks is yes, that's a
because of the reason you just lined out. Okay.
Well, or one of the other ways to think of it is that all this work is in the public right of way, which means that's property owned by the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Streets and sidewalks.
I think
Sometimes
that's-
businesses have a lot line that the sidewalk is both on the private side and the public side, but one works those issues through.
I think that's the right way to think about it. They're on the public right of way.
I've got a couple questions. Just a small, real quick point on the. I noticed in the application that the developer affidavit was not included. Is that a required? I'm looking at council. Is that a required?
I believe there's a
element?
developer affidavit in the redevelopment plan.
No, there's
There should be.
Not.
I know we turned it over to city council and staff.
Yeah, as I look at in the redevelopment plan, Appendix B just says that it's to be sent later. So
Oh, it has been submitted.
okay, all right. Just wanted to make certain that was done in case that was a necessary element of our finding of any potential finding for a but-for finding. My other questions are kind of along the lines of the assumptions, the economic assumptions that are made in the application and in the redevelopment plan. So as I look at the project assumptions, we're assuming almost $500 million of private investment over the next 23 years in the area. Do we have anything? I guess the question that I have is the conversations that you've been having with the developers over the course of developing this redevelopment plan, have those included any, I'm not going to say contractually obligated plans or development ideas, but do we have anything more than developers identifying something that could potentially be done in the district? Is there anything more concrete than that?
Yes. So one, there's site control. So many of the developers that we've discussed this with actually have strategic site control over parcels and buildings. They've got plans for them, but the challenges of getting those plans over the hump are great. And a program like this could make it faster for them to achieve that goal of developing it. So there are some real things based on site control and plans. And then there's some areas that we know, like we have a great partnership with SLU. We've talked to SLU about, areas like on Locust, 3301 Locust is right now storage for facilities and library. It's a very strategic area that could be in the future a beautiful residential area, connect Midtown retail, add more artist housing. And SLU has suggested that at a future time when ready, if we can find the right place to move a warehouse that's right now just sitting there, not generating anything in a storage, that they would consider getting out of position on a building like that. Now, we don't have that contractually baked in, but we have a good open dialogue with leadership there and an understanding to collaborate and work together on plans like this. So some, yes, we have site control, we have plans. Others, it's just the relationships and the conversations and partnerships we have and an understanding of the types of businesses and developments that would be appropriate in those areas.
Okay. I guess where I'm having just a little bit of heartburn is in the but for test. And I'm struggling to necessarily connect the infrastructure projects to the private investment that we're talking about. And I understand, at some level, a developer, when they're deciding whether, between, two different sites, one in the city and one in the county, in the county, are these public infrastructure improvements available, already done, or in the city, do they need to be built? I get that, but I don't necessarily see the absolute causal connection there. But I guess to kind of switch gears a little bit, when we are in the process of building one of the infrastructure projects and we experience, as construction always does, some difficulties, either in terms of schedule or cost. What is the plan to address, cost overruns? Is the plan to shrink the scope of the project to match the economic condition that is, before you, to value engineer it down? What's the plan for addressing those cost overruns?
I think I'm going to go back to your first point, and I appreciate the point. One of my early examples, if not but for the pedestrian lighting on Locust and Leonard, the next one of the most popular restaurants in St. Louis doesn't move into the area, right? Doesn't actually come down and feel like they can open that business. If we, and also with some of the challenges right now of getting new development financed, the requirements that the city has on labor, the costs are continuing to increase. So I think there's probably some small developers that would say, if not but for these improvements around this area, I can't put this development in this area. So, and then your second question is, I think that's going to be something we have to consider and again collaborate with the city on. I would hate to see us our first effort to be to shrink the scope of a project that without that scope isn't as impactful. So I think part of that is we need to go out and find new funds and look at other ways that we might be able to pull some other resources through. But if necessary, we would have to look at reducing scope. We hope to be very laser targeted on putting great plans together in a timeline and executing those quickly so that we don't drag things out and see a lot of cost overruns. Also, a lot of what we're looking at doing, there's already a pretty defined cost to them. If we collaborate with BPS or we just look at, lighting standards, I think we can get, it's not like we're building a high rise that has all these levels of finishes and has a lot of different areas that the cost can get out of whack. We're really working in a very narrow window of development projects, right? Or types of projects that don't have as many unknowns.
Thank you.
Other questions from
I have a couple questions. They're sort of technical in the plan itself, and then there's some but for that I have questions about as well. So the first is the 39 million, it's a cap, correct? So once you hit 39 million, you can't go over that. And then would it sunshine out after that point? So say, for example, you had 500 million in development before 2043. So that would just sunshine out, correct? And you would only have that amount? Next.
It is a cap.
Correct. I'm not familiar with the sunshine out term, but correct. Once that cap of $39.5 million of increment is generated, no additional, anything that would be generated above that would be going towards the all of the tax jurisdictions. It would not be captured by the special allocation fund.
And so in your project assumptions, the estimated development costs are part of that cap, that 39 million?
I don't believe they're part of the cap. I believe the way the instrument works is it's less about the private development that is created. It's more about it's more about the taxes that are generated. That's the bigger cap. You can put
and then the estimated development costs. Where do those come from?
Those are again. Oh, go ahead, Hank and Chris.
That's where we looked at every parcel and looked at what we thought the likelihood of success and the likelihood of timing was based on conversations first with developers and then some estimates of long-term cost. I think it's fair to say that the first 10 years of projects are projects that people are seriously interested in, but not willing to pull the trigger in now. And we get somewhat more speculative over time.
And just also to reinforce too that when we were talking to developers, we really focused on those that had already shown a commitment to the area and had projects they were in planning on or site control of things, right? We weren't speculating on a whole new wave of people coming into the district. We hope and expect that to happen, but we were very focused on the stakeholders that have already shown and proved their commitment and ability to get things done. I think that sums it up.
Mark, the mark of great success here of this TIF would be if we well exceed $500 million. If this creates an environment where people have found this area and are willing to proceed, hopefully without any subsidies.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I fully support what everyone's doing here. It's just sort of the technicalities of the but-for test as well. I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around that. I think it would be a little stronger point taken if there were some projects that were justifying the but-for. For example, you need these sidewalks done, you need broadband internet, you need water lines. That would be the infrastructure you're putting in.
Could I interject here
those
real
costs.
quick? One quick point of order. The redevelopment plan describes the redevelopment project as the infrastructure itself. So the but for here is that would that infrastructure occur but for TIF, not would all the 500 million in private development occur.
Follow-up question on that. So is the earnings tax increase include the labor for the construction work, the infrastructure, or any ancillary development?
In
for permanent employees in the buildings that would be built?
In the interest of trying to be as conservative as possible with the model, those construction wages were not included.
Thanks.
So if it's for infrastructure only at the but-for, we still don't know what the infrastructure would be, correct?
The plan describes, and Hank or Chris can jump in here, but it describes the block by block levels of improving the right of way. Now, does it go down to the exact detail and design of what the streetscape would look like? No, but it does specify the blocks that will be improved.
That's correct.
Other questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I just want to continue to drill down into that, because if we're talking just about the public infrastructure and we're justifying it, and I fully appreciate the fact that this is a pay-as-you-go setup, and I think that is, if this wasn't a pay-as-you-go setup, I think that would be fatal to this plan. I think it's somewhat speculative to assume that the projects will come in and generate the revenue to get to the 39.5 million. So I guess the issue that I'm just having with this is that the infrastructure, going back to what I said before, is that I don't necessarily see the causal connection between the infrastructure and the development. Now, if the argument is, or if the test that is before us is, would the public infrastructure improvements have been built but for the TIF? I think that's an easier hurdle to get over, but it kind of reinforces the ultimate question of whether the tax is going to be there at the end of the day to fully support the project. And so, yeah, that's just where my head is at.
And does that lead you to a conclusion?
I'll reserve my conclusion for later.
Okay. Are there further questions from the commission?
I would probably revise page 17, the land use map. I don't know if it's correct or not, so. In the development plan.
Yeah, I think there was the map on the zones was incorrect, which I pointed out earlier that it was left in the deck from a previous version that the city has to take it out. So that does need to get revised.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Is there a representative of the comptroller who wants present here? I don't know who's here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Would you have a comment?
Morning, Ryan Coleman, Comptroller's Office, Deputy Comptroller for Finance and Development. It's been historical sort of practice here for the commission. I don't think by statute, but just to ask if the comptroller is in favor of the project moving forward, and she is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was someone from the assessor's office, I think, in our earlier proceeding. Is such a person here and want to speak?
We also had Alderwoman Keys on
And the alderwoman, yes. Are you interested in speaking?
I believe Alderwoman Keys may have had to, I don't know if she may have another appointment. I don't see her still on the screen, but we do have her letter of support and have been collaborating with her since day one.
Very good. Thank you. And then I have in front of me two documents that people have asked to put in the record. Should I just read the references to those? One of them is headed Testimony by David Stokes, the Midtown Tax Increment Financing Proposal. It's a multi-page document speaking to the proposed project. The other that I have as written testimony is testimony written in support of this program from Metropolitan Village, Inc. And it speaks, I believe, in favor of the project. Are there, and those, without objection, will be included in the record?
The one from David Stokes and the Show Me Institute opposes the project.
Right. Okay. So I think it's time for public speakers.
Yes, sir.
And do we have a list, or how do you want to invite people appropriately?
We would like to, anybody in person would like to speak, please form a line and just state your name before you.
Thank you very much. My name is David Stokes. I brought copies of my testimony for everybody. I understand that you all have one, so I will save these, but if you need any more, or if the commission's clerk needs an official hard copy, of course, I have copies for everybody. So I'm not going to read what I gave to you, gentlemen. I promise you that. Nobody wants that. No, you don't want it, and I don't want it. I'll just take a few minutes to expand on a few thoughts related to it. First, I'll introduce myself. David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. We are a public policy organization that was based in the city of St. Louis and will again be based in the city of St. Louis. But thanks to our building being in bright red on that tornado map right there, we are temporarily in St. Louis County, but we shall return to the city hopefully within a couple of months. I'm not going to hit, I've testified before this commission, I've testified before TIF commissions around the state of Missouri. I'm not going to hit that hard on the tax aspect of the TIF. I'm going to get to another part. So I'm just going to briefly say that, the one gentleman who spoke earlier, the promises that were made of all the taxes that'll be raised and the growth that will come. Then one gentleman cited the Cortex development as a proof that these types of subsidies work. Well, I could just as easily cite the St. Louis marketplace as an example of how these types of subsidies fail. So, we can always pick one here or there, but overall, and I do have numerous study citations in here, the academic researchers who review these types of subsidies are pretty or near unanimous in that they don't really work. They don't really lead to economic growth. And the most important study related to the city of St. Louis, of course, was from the East-West Gateway Council of Governments a little over a decade ago, when they found in the St. Louis region that all of these subsidies did not live up to their promises. They did not create jobs as promised, and they were very expensive from taxpayer dollars. So I'm going to stop on that for now. But just to say, their promises of $400 million in economic growth, people need to realize that that's really it's sort of fairy dust. I mean, they're just putting that out there because the law requires that they put a number out there. Like the quality of the projections to come up with that number are, to quote WashU economist Michel Boldrin in court when he was testifying on not this one, obviously, but a lawsuit in regards to a similar proposal. I mean, he famously said, in my world at least, that if his students came to him with this type of economic analysis, he'd throw them out of his office. So that's what this is. So I'm going to wrap there, and I'm going to get to a bigger picture critique of this particular TIF. And I understand that they're not seeking the full amount of the TIF. They're only going for half of the pilots, and I understand and appreciate that. And that they're not claiming to be an economic development TIF. It's a different type of TIF, and I get that. But I do find it all very, very, very troubling. I mean, we're here celebrating the 250th anniversary of America this year, and sort of representative democracy. And right here we have a group that just basically say, and one other thing to say, opposition to the TIF aside, please don't take this as a criticism of the great work that the Kransberg Art Foundation and Grand Center and all do for the community. It's not a criticism of those groups at all. They do tremendous work. But this TIF is a very, very bad idea from the big perspective that you're sort of now, not to defend prior TIFs, that's the last thing I would ever do, but at least they had the attempt to use the tax dollars in a way to grow the economy. That was at least the plan. And here we're just sort of turning the future taxes over to a private group that says, we can do better with it than the elected officials. And maybe they can, but I think that's a very, very dangerous precedent. So work with me on just a mental exercise for a moment. What if the people of the wealthiest area of St. Louis, sort of the part Lindell to Skinker to the Parkway to Kings Highway, those beautiful mansions along the park, and what if they said, well, let's come up with our own TIF. We'll draw a district and we'll say, well, we're not taking any of your current funds, and we're not even taking all of your future funds. We just want half of your future taxes to come to us for ways that we want to spend in our own neighborhood along Lindell and the like. And the idea that this will be the last group that comes up with a plan like this is crazy. Obviously, Lafayette Square came up with a very similar plan, smaller, as they said, several years ago, but it's not going to stop here. And does this commission really want to go down a very, I think, very dangerous road for democracy, where in the not too distant future, all the prosperous retail-oriented or business-oriented parts of St. Louis have kept all their future taxes. And they said, well, we're not keeping the current ones. We're not taking the $39 million from the city of St. Louis. We're just taking the future $39 million from the city, and we're going to spend it as we see fit. I have no idea what the best investment of that $39 million is in the city of St. Louis. It might be infrastructure in Midtown. It might be police in North City. It might be firemen in South City. It might be business investment in downtown. I do not know. I do know that we elect people to make these decisions, and that those elected officials are then held accountable by voters for their decisions. And to start a path where we're just going to turn control of this tax money to private organizations, look, in 15 years or so, if you've got a dozen groups like this, well, then the city's going to turn around for necessary public funds for public investments, and they're going to be, where did all our money go? How do we have this? And I think the chairman said it very nicely, and if I may quote you, sir, where he said, what this does is this makes this neighborhood a bigger priority than other neighborhoods. And I think they have that quote correct. And I think that's going to be repeated. And I think it's a danger that will be substantial. And I will just I'm going to start to wrap up here, just another minute or two, I promise. You know, these TIFs last a long time. So right now, everybody here is like, this is going to be public investment. And they even said, I don't think it's in the contract or in the proposal, but here we said it's going to be even in the right of way. And people said, well, we'll agree it's in the right of way. Well, where are we going to be 15 years from now? When all of you have been replaced by other members of this commission, everybody running the Midtown TIF will be new people. All the staff here will be gone. Like, who's going to remember that the promise was right away? And this TIF will still be going on, and people are saying, well, as long as it's somewhat of a public investment, we'll count it. I'm working with people on a TIF in Battlefield outside of Springfield right now that was passed a long time ago. Nobody remembers what it was for. I'm not making this up. They're not filing any of their documents. They're spending the money still, but nobody has any memory of it. And I think this is just to turn the control of tax dollars over to private groups is going to be repeated in other parts of the city. And I think that's a very dangerous path to go down and fundamentally undemocratic, as I wrote more in a Business Journal piece a few weeks ago. And with that, I will wrap up. I hope you read the longer version of my comments that get a little more academic and technical that you all have before you. I thank you for the time today. And the last thing I'm going to say, which I wasn't planning to say, but as somebody who has sat before dozens of TIF hearings, scores of TIF hearings around the state of Missouri, I'm going to get time off in purgatory because of it. I promise you. The quality of the questions being asked by you, the Board of Commissioners, is much better than I usually see. So I do commend the TIF Commission on that. And with that, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Shirley Emerson, and I'm the president of the Metropolitan Village Incorporated. And I think before you have a letter and a map of our area. I'm here this morning to offer our support for the TIF, but also to bring you up to speed maybe on who we are and the impact that we have had in the community. Because for nearly 5 decades, Metropolitan Village has supported housing and community development in Midtown. Metropolitan Village is the nonprofit that sponsors the Lucas Heights housing complex. And Lucas Heights is a housing complex that has 566 units. The proposed development is within our larger target area because we serve an area from Martin Luther King to Delmar, or to Samuel Shepherd rather, and from Compton to Leffingwell. And so we support the Midtown public infrastructure redevelopment plans because obviously We're talking about investments in sidewalks, lighting, stormwater management, pedestrian connections, other public infrastructure that can provide tangible benefits to the people that already live here while supporting Midtown's continued growth. However, we do welcome the opportunity to participate in the steering committees, in the structure proposed in the submitted application, so that we can ensure that the residents and the community organizations have a meaningful role as priorities are established and projects are moved forward. And so that as the proposal advances, we also want to better understand how the TIF boundary relates to the larger metropolitan village, just larger property footprint. And we also want to ensure that our residents serve, that we serve, benefit from these investments. And I also want to mention that in terms of our residents that we serve a mixture of residents because our complex includes affordable housing, market rate housing, as well as senior housing. So we have a variety of people that we serve. And so our interest is straightforward. We just want to make sure that the investment succeeds, but we want our residents to benefit. And we want to be a constructive partner in helping to achieve those outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public speakers here in the audience?
Oh, good.
Sure.
Morning, commissioners, staff, development team, everybody. My name's Jerry Connolly. I'm a Sixth Ward resident. Just an observation. I think it's very telling that the development team are not in this room. They're all on Zoom. I appreciate the commissioners who are here in person. Could someone clarify, are there any current representatives from St. Louis Public School on the TIF Commission? Has anyone been
Those two
designated?
positions are currently vacant.
They're currently vacant. Okay. All right. So we have the entity that's most impacted by the property tax component currently doesn't have representatives on the commission. I'm not sure where that issue is, but I find that deeply problematic in that 60% of the property taxes do go to the public schools. Also, Mr. Hansen had said at the June meeting that in his remarks to you to advocate for this going to a hearing, that he wanted this to be start of a public conversation. And while I understand that community groups such as Metropolitan Village and local businesses have been involved, this hasn't been a broader public conversation. And typically, we don't get much question and answer opportunity at these hearings. And if it's to be a genuine conversation, we need to get some questions answered. And the first place I'd like to start is the kind of mechanism for fund collection. My understanding is the collector of revenue, collects the taxes, and typically on TIF projects, there's a special allocation fund at the comptroller who then distributes that when they're eligible expenses. So now we have a situation with a non-elected body with a fiscal entity with the Kransberg Arts Foundation, but a non-elected body is governing how this money gets spent. So I find that problematic, but I really want to get clarification that of the funds collected, that the comptroller's office, and Mr. Coleman, I don't know if you can confirm this, that the comptroller's office is dictating, this is the amount that goes to the fiscal agent to distribute, and that the city does have that, 50% of the pilots and 50% of the economic activity taxes. So if someone could clarify that. And then the second kind of, I wouldn't say elephant in the room, but the big unknown is Mr. Hartzler quoted, consultation with unnamed developers and unspecified projects, the total of which will be $445 million or so over the next 20 years. Well, I think before you vote on recommending this project to the Board of Aldermen, I think we need to know, who are those developers? What are the projects and where are they? And third item is within this district, we have private developments that are currently tax abated. Over the next 20 years, the majority of those are going to roll off roll off their abatement, become fully back on the tax rolls. Will this TIF be capturing the increased assessed value that the city is collecting? So if Jason Johnson's, I'm not sure what his projects over in the kind of Beaumont, Locust, Washington area, when they roll off the abatement, is this TIF going to capture that delta? Because that could be, we were made promises, the public was made promises when those projects went through the Board of Aldermen that, hey, you've got this fancy financial analysis, and in 10 years or 15 years' time, it's going to kick off this huge revenue. So my question is that delta from those tax abatement projects, is half of that going to go into this TIF rather than flowing through to all the taxing jurisdictions? And I would like to come back to some of the points Mr. Stokes is making in that it's kind of resource hoarding. The vast majority of TIF projects that have been successful in terms of resulting in development have been in the central corridor. And, that's diverted resources from the rest of the city. So now we have a situation where a neighborhood with the means of, private foundations and businesses has the wherewithal to bring in a consultant and put together this project with the city. And basically, they are being this area is going to be prioritized over other parts of the city. And, the tornado map is on the wall over here showing its impact. And, why aren't we looking at a North City TIF to enhance infrastructure in the tornado devastated areas? 15 months after the tornado, the city has renovated, 34 houses. And if we were as efficient as allocating incentives, if we are efficient as repairing those properties as we are in allocating incentives and creating new districts, I think we'd be serving our wider population better. So I really encourage you to have Mr. Hartzler tell us a bit about who these developers are and what the projects are. 10 years ago, there was a series of projects that went through this commission. Jefferson Arms, not quite completed. The Armory project, the first part of it substantially completed. Unfortunately, that initial effort failed. And now they're scrambling to put in a massive data center right next door to a TIF district. And it was really only because of public outcry that the developer moved their project to the Goodwill building rather than the Armory parking lot. But, Green Street, the company that put that project together, SLDC and the Board of Aldermen have supported that company over 20 years. And a lot of their commercial projects were speculative in nature. So I just think we're hearing about potential projects, but we know very, very little about them. And, the formula for this $39 million is predicated on a consultant's projections. And I wouldn't move forward on this unless you have substantive information on what those projections are. Thanks for your time. I hope you can answer some of those questions.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the room who wanted to make a public comment? Do we have people online?
Yes, Chair, we have 5 speakers. I believe the first one is Dan Pate.
Hi, did that work? The unmuting?
You're welcome to speak now, yes.
Okay, thanks. I do swear to tell the whole truth, so help me, Ra. I appreciate coming in. First off, thank you for doing 50% pilots and 50% eats instead of 100% pilots. There is one thing I want to make sure it says in the documents that the city has the ultimate authority on whether or not they're going to allocate the 50% to the taxing districts from the special allocation fund. So can you guys put something in writing that forces the city to do that so they don't get other ideas and direct the 50% that's supposed to go to the rest of the taxing districts elsewhere in this? And I appreciate the Kranzberg Arts Foundation and everything that's happened. And this does divert revenue away from the rest of the city to benefit a small district, like Mr. Stokes was talking about. If a bunch of well-to-do houses wanted to do this, it would be resource hoarding, and this is the city's responsibility. So I understand that we have a lot of difficult issues. We have wicked problems in this city. And unfortunately, to deal with that, it seems like the city allows alphabet soup to happen. We get SBDs and CIDs and TDDs and a couple PIDs. WTF are we doing? The city needs to get its act together and actually take care of the problems and not just allow it outsourcing the basic necessities of fulfilling the life of residents. We need to be able to exist. This takes revenue from the city, and I hope that something like this works and this district, it generates all the activity that it's supposed to, but that money needs to be distributed. I can't believe I'm saying this, by the elected officials at the Board of Aldermen to the entire city, and not hoarded from the district that generates it. I mean, it doesn't work. The haves, unfortunately or fortunately in society, provide for have-nots, and it needs to be more evenly done. And we need to not keep doing more districts to where the people that can afford to pay consultants and stand up commission meetings get to benefit from the fact that they have enough money to do that. So, I mean, with that, I'll leave everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you. And is there another person from the public?
Steve Smith.
Mr. Smith, please go ahead. Mr. Smith, we see your hand. Are you with us?
I'm trying to figure out how to be heard.
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Steve Smith. By way of context, I'm a city resident. My businesses have been located in the city for 40 years. I own a lot of real estate in the city. I pay real estate taxes on probably about 10 buildings. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees who pay city earnings tax. So I do pay a lot of taxes. I'm also significantly involved in Grand Center, have been since 1999, so 27 years, and have invested over $100 million in the district over that time period. So I have a lot of firsthand experience that I do want to share with the commission and with the public. The most specific example I do want to talk about is City Foundry, because I think it's a dramatic example. City Foundry had sat empty for 10 years when we acquired the property in 2016, and it paid about $90,000 a year in real estate taxes. It paid $0 a year in sales taxes, $0 a year in payroll taxes, $0 a year in utility taxes. It had basically a real estate tax. So nothing to the general fund of the city, nothing that would benefit other than the school district, which is fine and good. Last year, in 2025, we had $63 million in retail sales at City Foundry. I think that's publicly noted. That's about $5 million in sales taxes alone, not including payroll taxes, not including real estate taxes, just in sales taxes. Now, some of that goes to the state. So the way I look at it is in the 10 years before we opened City Foundry, the total taxes paid by that site, which by the way is a 15-acre site, was $90,000 a year. That's $900,000. Over the next 10 years, we'll pay $50 million in taxes of just sales taxes. So that's just data interpreted in any way you want. I can answer questions later. City Foundry would not have happened had it not been for Cortex. Cortex arrived 10 years earlier. It was created. It did what it did. There was infrastructure invested. Obviously, they made investment in buildings. IKEA happened. City Foundry would not have happened without that. City Foundry did get a separate TIF, independent of what happened to Cortex, but I just wanted to give you that context, being the guy who actually borrowed the money, raised the money, and did the development. By the way, we have now spent $350 million on the City Foundry site. Phase one was about $250 million, and phase two, the apartment building, is right at $104 million. So getting to the numbers we're talking about at Grand Center can happen over a period of time. So that's the City Foundry experience. I mentioned earlier in Grand Center that I've invested to see the Motor Museum Complex, the Grand Center Arts Academy, the Sun Theater, the On-God Arts Hotel, Hotel Ignacio, Robert May Hall, and most recently the Sovereign. Those are all historic tax credit buildings. Every single one of those, every one received historic tax credits. Some of them did not have any tax payments. Some did, but not all of them. Right now, Grand Center is ready to see new construction. There are a lot of parking lots in Grand Center. I've been there for 27 years. I own the parking lot behind the On-God Arts Hotel, and I have had the parking lot behind Hotel Ignacio or across from the circus fluoro tent under contract with St. Louis University in the past. We have plans for both of those to do multifamily. We believe Grand Center is ready and would thrive as a residential neighborhood. The nominally 3 apartment buildings in the district today are doing well. We're ready to build new construction. I have to attract investors. At City Foundry and in our other projects, we have raised money from around the world. I have investors from England. I have investors from all over the United States. They have to believe in St. Louis. And the role that the city of St. Louis plays is often asked of me when I have an investor talking about investing $10 million or large sums of money. So I think it's important that we're making infrastructure improvements and that the city is supporting development in the city of St. Louis. The last thing I want to share is I'm a born and raised St. Louisan. My family has been here for 4 generations, and I have 2 generations after me. And in my lifetime, the city of St. Louis has lost population, lost tax base, lost jobs, and lost prestige. I agree with some of the other comments. We need to do stuff to change the trajectory of this region. And part of that is to make St. Louis attractive to the world. And Grand Center, Forbes magazine ran an article in the last 6 months boasting about Grand Center as one of the most unique arts districts in the United States. I think we as a community, civic leaders, political leaders, residents, business leaders, we all have to work together to make the St. Louis more attractive. And I think Grand Center is one of the opportunities to do that. Otherwise, we're just moving deck chairs on the Titanic here. So I strongly, strongly support, as a major taxpayer and as one of the unnamed developers, and Nick, I appreciate, not necessarily naming developers, let the developers speak for themselves. So I appreciate that. Willing to invest a lot more and expect to be able to raise dollars to start building new construction in Grand Center. And this is a very important component to allowing us to be able to raise the investors and the lenders that would allow us to do that. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any other public speakers?
Yes, sir. Peg Weathers. And when you speak, can you tell us if you're speaking in favor or against the proposal, please?
Great. Trying to get the audio, the video, but I'll leave it alone. Hi, I'm Peg Weathers. I'm the president and CEO of Grand Center Incorporated. I'm here to speak in support of the Midtown Public Infrastructure TIF. We know that there is an appetite for development because it's happening right now. But we have to, regarding the public infrastructure elements, there is no one source of funding for the public infrastructure improvements. So it's not done in a coordinated fashion, meaning we have a developer come in and there's a project that they want to do, and we look at the sources for funding that project, and then we get that done and we move on to the next. This TIF would provide a source and a reliable source of funding for the district. The elements that we're talking about are not benefiting one developer or another. These are public infrastructure improvements. They benefit the public. We're talking streets, lighting, crosswalks. Right now, Grand Center has taken on the installation of new streetlights. If the city has so many public infrastructure needs that they cannot address all throughout the city. So individual areas or organizations collaborating take them on, like this lighting project that Grand Center has taken on. It's millions of dollars. It's just the street lights. There's nothing fancy about those lights, but they improve lighting. We know that visitors will feel safer. We know they will stay longer. They'll spend more. All of that contributes to the revenue the city will see. This money isn't currently anything that exists. This money will exist if Grand Center's Midtown is able to improve through this public infrastructure TIF and continued development. But right now, the street lighting that's being installed is Grand Center has been doing it through private foundations. So like the Gateway Foundation and Burgess Family Foundation, that's a sort of crazy use of their funds because it's public infrastructure. So I want to tell you that we are in favor of this, and I hope that we receive your approval because our area already contributes greatly to the city revenue, but and we'd like an additional opportunity to continue. We'd like to continue our improvement and our pace at which we are developing this area of town. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yes, sir. Ann Kitling? I'm sorry if I mispronounced. Oh,
No, it's Ann Kitloss. Thank you.
thank you.
I assume you can hear me. I'm Ann Kitloss. I am the executive director of the Locust Business District. Just to add context, I'm a 30-year city resident, 5th generation in the city, with one come after me living in the city. And I'm here to speak on support of the TIF. The Locust Business District includes about 80% of this TIF area in Midtown. We also cross Jefferson into downtown West. The LBD has served this area for more than 40 years. I think we're the oldest special business district in the city. And, as one of the speakers talked about, how do you take the energy and intentions of the founders and continue with them over a long period of time? And I think that is done through the ordinance that we hope the Board of Aldermen will create, but also the bylaws that we are working on jointly with the Kransberg Arts Foundation, with the Chaffetz School of Business, to try to create bylaws and a governance structure that does look at who's involved today, what the needs are today, but also stretches decades into the future. We're very aware of that. Speaking of the 250 years of our nation and having to have an adjustable constitution and understanding, we come from that intention as well. Right now, the LBD provides supplemental security, beautification, and advocacy, like the work that I'm doing here. But that's changed over time as the needs of the community have changed. The Locust Business District business owners, small business owners, property owners have struggled for decades to create identity, to build up a neighborhood. We've had tremendous success in that area through Midtown Alley. along Locust, principally in Midtown, but it's really, small dollars with very invested people to try to build something and create momentum. This TIF can be transformational for the economic and population health and vibrancy of our whole city, not just this area. It's an investment for developers, for small businesses, but also residents, students, visitors. Private investment can't create and implement a comprehensive public realm plan. That really is the job of public dollars. And if we can, focus on this area, that is a critical kind of missing puzzle piece, I see it as, between downtown Grand Center and the West End. It connects north and south along Jefferson, along Grand, along Compton. It really is the piece that can be a real economic engine for this city. We've benefited in our area from the catalytic projects, again, investments in like Energizer Park, the NGA, the performing arts venues on Grand. But again, we need the public realm investment that this brings. We also are aware of our proximity to Harris-Stowe State University and St. Louis University, and want to improve this area to appeal to new students who are becoming fewer and fewer, creating job opportunities for them, providing housing opportunities for them. Student population is declining nationwide, and we really need to be competitive and try to do everything we can to keep students as young professionals, providing them opportunities and keep them in our area. One of the things that I've appreciated, as I mentioned before, in our partnership with the Kranzberg Arts Foundation and others, is the structure which we're working on with regard to governance, that there will be a central board governing body that tries to tie the pieces together, but the pieces are coming from the existing stakeholders and new stakeholders who will be coming into the area. This area does have a vibrant small business scene. It does have one of the stakeholder groups that I'm very aware of and want to protect the interests of are our religious institutions and our nonprofit organizations. This isn't all just private investment. We've got VA properties, we've got substantial Salvation Army properties, we've got Vivint Health, we've got Food Outreach, Central Baptist Church, a Presbyterian church. And these are really critically important stakeholders and contributors and client-facing organizations. And many of them serve older populations, veterans, people with compromised health. And when you look at the sidewalks and you look at the intersections, I mean, I'm right now helping care for older family members. My father uses a wheelchair. And so I've become much more acutely aware of the dangers of old curb cuts that are at really hazardous angles. When you feel like, or you see a wheelchair topple over, it's really terrifying. And so we want to improve the access to these critical nonprofit organizations and client-serving organizations through these private investments, through this money that's going to come in that can help improve those experiences. But we're also, wanting to include those people in these zone-based boards to help lift up project ideas that then there can be this comprehensive plan. That's the dream, and it's a really terrific dream. One of the opportunities, or what is happening, is that we're creating community just in this process itself. There's huge benefit in bringing these stakeholders together into a common conversation, creating a vision for this area. And if no money ever came in, which I doubt that that's going to be the outcome, but if no money came in, you're really creating a community of committed city investors, residents, students, stakeholders of all kinds, and there's incredible value in that. So I'm excited about the public realm planning, the public realm investment that can come out of this. The private investors, like one of the speakers talked about, are you just doing the sidewalk in front of your building? Absolutely not. There's no savings in scale of doing it that way. We want to be looking at broader swaths of blocks and intersections to really uh, elevate this area. And one of the reasons we want to work on this area is that, for example, this opportunity may be coming too soon, but we're going to have the Olympic marathon trials running straight through this neighborhood in 2028. And you don't photograph an Olympic marathon at street level, you do it from the drone level, from up above. And we want to make sure, and we will be working hard in the next 2 years to make sure that we present St. Louis as a really world-class place that people are excited about, want to come to. I mean, we just saw the World Cup and how cities were able to elevate themselves and their image. And we look forward to having those opportunities in St. Louis with the Olympic marathon trials, with the soccer. There's like 8 soccer games. There'll be great opportunities to elevate St. Louis, and that's right in our neighborhood here. And we're excited to make those investments, and we want to create those investments over the next couple of decades. So the Locust Business District is strongly in favor of this TIF, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Are there other public speakers?
One last speaker, John R. There, thank you.
Hi, my name is Regenbogen, and I am speaking for informational purposes, so neither for or against at this time. First, I wanted to say that I really appreciate the Kransberg Foundation's work, not just in the Grand Center area, but also in neighborhoods like Gravois Park through the Art Place Affordable Housing Initiative. That's some really neat stuff. Second, I was going to say that I was the parent of 2 SLPS parents, but then I remembered one is off to college next week, so now there's just one in the house. Anyway, my comments are largely focused on the impact of the TIF on school funding. And I also want to mention that I believe it was mentioned that the SLPS representative slots on the TIF commission were vacant, and I believe those have been intended to be filled. And I'm not sure what's going on there with why they are not there today, but hopefully that can get worked out soon. The proposal for a reduced 50% TIF is a big step forward over past practices in St. Louis. And I generally want to thank the sponsors, for taking a look at that. But I think it should be pointed out that the western part of this proposed area with the Midtown TIF was located in the Grand Center TIF, which captured all of the increase in real property tax. I think it was over $25 million before expiring, I believe, just this past tax year. So it is a little discouraging to see a new TIF proposal, even one with better terms, following on so soon. Further, I don't think that funding that is intended to educate our city's school children should be used to fund the city's obligation of public streets and sidewalks and the like. Pure cities like Cleveland, Ohio agree. Cleveland has enacted non-school public infrastructure TIFs for downtown a couple years ago and for the disinvested east side just this summer. These TIFs do not freeze public school property taxes, and they allow the schools to fully benefit. With that in mind, if the TIF is passed, directing the portion of special allocation funds that the city would receive to SLPS, along with other compensation agreements, can be a way to make our school children whole by making this a de facto non-school TIF, similar to what is happening in Cleveland and in some peer cities. I also would like to share some concerns about the financial cost benefit analysis, which I believe may significantly underestimate the amount of property tax that would be received under the no build scenario. First, how do we ensure that follow-on tax abatements to the private developments modeled in the $400 million in projects, how do we ensure that they're not granted tax abatements to make them pencil out? That would significantly alter the projections if they are a granted abatement. Also, I believe the largest project listed in there, approximately $90 million project, is already authorized for a 10-year 90% abatement upon completion. So that's some significant numbers there that would accrue over, I think, 18 years of being off tax abatement. And I think maybe it was another speaker had mentioned the question of is that captured by the TIF? And I think it is, and would not fully accrue to the taxing districts. Also, it appears that it is not properly accounting for 9 parcels with a 2025 assessed value of $5.7 million that are under current tax abatement, but will expire within the next few years. Nor does it take into account developments that are currently underway and that will further increase taxable assessed value in a few years. In short, I believe beginning with the 2031 tax year, the base value should be around $7 million more than what the analysis shows in the no-build scenario. So for SLPS, by 2049, that should generate nearly as much as the net benefit of $6.3 million listed in increased property taxes that the analysis shows. And of course, the no-build scenario assumes nothing else will be built with or without tax abatement under normal circumstances and without the TIF. I don't think that's realistic. In addition, I don't think the analysis states whether it takes into account the substitution effects on sales tax revenues, and that can be quite high. If I recall correctly, the TIF application for the nearby Foundry project had a substitution effect exceeding well over 50%, meaning that yes, money is spent there, and that's new money from that site, but for the city as a whole and for the taxing districts, it's not new money. So that, I think, is important to clarify if it is included in the substitution effect is included, and these numbers are not. In addition, I believe that SLPF 2/3 cent DSEG sales tax is split with charter schools on a per pupil basis. So for these 2 reasons of the substitution effect and that split with charters, I believe the amount SLPS would receive would be a fraction of what is stated in analysis for the DSEG sales tax. So I hope that the financial models are thoroughly scrutinized and action delayed for a reasonable time. As was mentioned, it's completely appropriate if you feel it's necessary to be more comfortable. And also, especially if SLPS is intended to have representatives on the commission at this point and they've been filled, I think it's really crucial to verify that, what kind of input they may have before any decision is made. So, a delay of a couple of weeks, I think should probably be able to, clarify some of the financial models, some of the questions that have been raised today, and most importantly, to ensure that SLPS, which receives approximately 60% of property taxes, that their important voice is involved here. So thank you very much, commissioners, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I believe we have one last speaker, Kaveh Razani.
Thank you, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Kaveh Razani. Proud city resident of 30 years, St. Louis Public School parent, founding director of the St. Louis Art Place Initiative, which was referenced earlier, in current real estate consultants. Also the current vice chair, past chair, and 15-year board member of our Cherokee Street SID. I've developed commercial property on Cherokee Street, had small businesses on Cherokee in the arts and music industries. And I wanted to speak today in support of this TIF. I think another important identifier for me is a reviler of false dichotomies and a believer that every compromise leaves folks unsatisfied on both sides. And as a recovering idealist and burgeoning pragmatist, I think it's important to state for me that I agree with a lot of the politics and perspectives of our previous speakers, particularly the gentleman in person, Mr. Stokes and Mr. Connolly. They have had perspectives that I've agreed with in the past and tend to align with very much so in the past. But I do want to say that a particular example with my work in Art Place seems to apply here too. We often get asked the question, and I should also state that I spend an extreme amount of time working in the affordable housing industry, particularly the for sale affordable housing industry. It is a very important part of my life and my work and my identity. And we often get asked, in Gravois Park, why we focus on artists. Why not focus on everybody? And I think the answer to that question is clear to me, but not often apparent to the broader conversation. And that is that the arts tend to catalyze community in a way that very few other professions do. And I think what the Kranzberg has shown in Midtown is that we can take an area of blight and spend 10 years with largely private investment and turn it into a world-class arts destination. And I want to caution ourselves about this notion that setting a certain precedent or that the existence of a TIF like this prioritizes one neighborhood over another. And I think that a presence of one thing is not the inherent implication of the absence of its opposite. Preferencing artists or supporting artists does not mean that we are denying access and opportunity to other working class folks that live in a divested and quickly gentrifying neighborhood. I think it's important to realize that there are other ancillary benefits in uplifting the work that happens in this community, in this neighborhood. For example, generating arts commerce and arts tourism supports public art across the city through an allocation that goes to the Regional Arts Commission, which hopefully continues. And I think that saying that we are setting a precedent against representative democracy is in a way devaluing the notion of representative democracy in the first place. If we're here trusting this commission to make a decision on this day or in a week or in 4 weeks or whatever, are we not also going to trust them to make a decision when another private neighborhood of haves decides to come with a plan to create a private TIF? I think we need to be able to separate things out and take them on a case-by-case basis. Otherwise, we're doing a disservice to the real work that needs to get done between now and when we achieve this world of representative democracy that seems to be failing us. I think the reality is we would all love for the city to see its obligations through, but the truth of the matter is that today that is not happening. And what needs to be done to capture the momentum and the energy of the work that is happening and be able to leverage that into positive growth. So I do want to say to the folks that spoke before me that I do agree with y'all in theory and in philosophy. And thank you for speaking to a lot of those points. But for me, this is an opportunity to take something that is more complex than a simple A or B and put it into practice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I believe there are no more public speakers.
That is correct.
Okay. So it has SLDC expressed its opinion in this proposal, and are you representing the mayor's office in their view on this?
We are, yes.
And what's the position in favor of this proposal?
We are in favor of this proposal.
Okay. Is there any further comment from any of the commissioners?
Yes, very quickly. I have a few points to make. One, I applaud you, gentlemen. I think you're all gentlemen for not bringing a tax increase forward. Secondly, I understand your predicament. I mean, let's be honest here. This is a failure of this city to provide adequate infrastructure and not living up to their responsibility and obligation. And so you've been put in that predicament. I understand that. Thirdly, I see this as a $39 million line of credit with no defined source of repayment. It's like me lending money to my unemployed neighbor with the hope that he's going to get a job, mitigated by the fact that the city takes no risk. So I'll grant you that. I also want to make the point has been made. This is a terrible precedent. And it's all based on if you've paved my street, then I'm more apt to remodel my bathroom. I don't know. Don't know about that. This is a bad precedent. And now you've opened the door and let the cat out of the bag for any neighborhood to come and say, we want more. And then finally, guys, I'm going to warn you, your infrastructure, your guidance is ripe for, the boards that you want to establish. It's ripe for self-dealing. It's ripe to not have the efficient allocation of resources. And I hope you tighten that up, make that clear. And the other thing I really hope you keep the politicians out of that. Because when they see $39 million, they're going to want to spend it by their own means. So don't worry. I'm going to vote to support this, but I want everybody who presented this, and that's as much SLDC as this. This is a choice between a horrendous deal and a bad deal. And I'm going to go with the bad deal. So those are just my comments for you.
Could I respond?
Yeah. I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. I'd like to respond to a couple of comments made. One on just since we had a lot of credentials and Wash U mentioned. I spent 14 years as the executive vice chancellor at Wash U and as a faculty member there. I'm now the Clark visiting professor at the University of Texas, Austin. And I understand that there are a lot of bad TIFs, a lot of TIFs that I've opposed. There are a lot of TIFs that I didn't think made any sense at all. Many of them in the suburbs, by the way. And if you look at the East-West Gateway. So there also have been TIFs such as the Foundry TIF and the Cortex TIF that have paid off very well. And your job is to decide what's most likely to work. I think I want to emphasize one really big point. And I think it's different than, yes, it's paved the street and then hope people invest in their bathrooms. But it's really the opposite of that. It's that after the first, it's that if I invest in my bathroom, then you can pave the next street. If it doesn't work, there's no risk to the city because the vast majority of the $39 million is generated on new development. So that's where I don't think the analogy is quite right. This is generated by people making new investments predominantly. And if they don't make those investments, which I would be very unhappy with, then there isn't any revenue generated that allows other things to happen. There isn't any new revenue to support other parts of the city, and there isn't any new revenue generated to allow the TIF to continue to make public investments. The logic of this TIF is it only works if the model works, which is public investment leads to private investment. And, I
Thank you. Go ahead. Have you finished?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So the example of the foundry had a developer. I think in this case, it's hard to define what these hypotheticals are. So it's a lot harder of a decision for us here. The assessed values are going to increase. Assessed values really don't decrease in most cases. Okay, so there's going to be taxes that go into the district that are going to be used for the district purposes. So on our case, we're just hoping that development will occur without having definitive plans. So that's where the catch is here. So that's what we're trying to really, that's why my stomach's turning right now to decide if I vote yes or no in this case.
Further comments from the commissioners? One last point, certainly to the public, is that all we do here is make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. So this is all open to the political process, and people as citizens have every right to participate in that. We will welcome your doing that.
I have one more.
Okay.
Can anybody describe or explain why, or does anybody know how St. Louis Public Schools appoints their members to this commission, or how that works and why they're not represented?
David, can you speak on?
Yeah, I mean, the statute provides that the public
Schools have 2 seats on this commission, which they have delegated. I presume the board makes that decision. They have not appointed anyone to one of the spots for some time, and we discovered yesterday the person who we thought was on this commission informed us he is not. So we do not have seats for either of those or directive from the board on who they would like to. The school board would appoint somebody.
That's obviously not a priority for them, or they'd have done it.
Apparently, at this point, they have chosen not to direct anyone to attend.
Further comments from the members of the commission? Hearing none, I'm going to move for a resolution approving the Midtown Public Infrastructure Redevelopment Area, TIF redevelopment plan, designating the redevelopment area described therein and approving the redevelopment project described therein and expressing the TIF Commission's recommendation to the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis to adopt the same. Is there a second? Okay. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I will take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Pollock,
Present.
yes or no for the vote?
I'll
For the
abstain.
He's abstaining.
Abstain. Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner Powderly,
I'll abstain.
Commissioner Smart,
No.
Commissioner Owens,
Yes.
Commissioner Claiborne,
Yes.
Chair Newberger.
Yes.
So the motion passes with 4 voting yes, 1 no, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Is there any further business that we need to have before the meeting? Either in the public or going into executive session?
No,
No.
sir.
Okay, and so what's the next plan for the TIF commission? Do we have anything coming up? There's, I believe, our next regular session will be September 16.
Correct. If we do receive an application time, we'll have that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Then I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.